Mom screamed, "Get out and never come back." So I did. Weeks later, Dad asked why I stopped paying the mortgage. My reply shut them down completely. The phone buzzed again. Once more, my old iPhone slid slightly across the wooden table as if trying to escape. The screen kept lighting up with names I knew by heart. Mom, Dad, Ethan, the same three, looping like a recurring nightmare. 6 months ago, I walked away from that house in the suburbs of Tulsa. No shouting, no tears. I just left quietly after my mother screamed the final words. "You and grateful brat, get out and don't come back." I turned my back as she said, it not because I wanted to appear noble, I was simply too drained to respond. After years of living like a shadow, I had no energy left to argue. I was curled up in a creaky chair inside a one-bedroom apartment in North Oklahoma City. Every corner of the place bore a weary hue, but at least it was mine. No one waited behind the door with a phone bill or a cold accusation, just the soft creak of the ceiling fan and lazy sunlight slipping through the curtains. The phone lit up again. Mom, for the 5th time, a text popped up even before the ringtone. "Naomi, if you still care about this family, even a little, please pick up. Ethan is overwhelmed." I pressed my lips together, swiping across the screen without unlocking it. I'd heard that phrase too many times. "He's struggling, he needs you. He's your little brother, Ethan." The one Mom had coddled from age 10 through 31. The one who never held a real job, yet always had new clothes, new gaming consoles, and someone to clean up his messes. That someone used to be me. I used to work 60 hours a week at the insurance firm, then come home to change light bulbs, cook dinner, and cover the electric bill. I used to be the good daughter, the one holding the family above water with her own blood and sleep-deprived nights. I once believed that if I just tried a little harder, they'd finally see me. I was wrong. I flipped the phone to silent mode, then placed it face down. The echo of its vibration still buzzed in my skull, like a curse that hadn't quite worn off. But it was okay. I'd learned how to keep it from cutting into my chest. I'd learned how to sit still and let them panic. The day I left, the sky was clear, no rain, no thunder to foreshadow anything. I packed a few outfits, my laptop and an old teddy bear into a rolling suitcase, and locked the door behind me with the finality of a period at the end of a sentence. They told me I wasn't welcome back, and I respected that entirely. What they didn't expect was that I would actually disappear. Mom still sends weekly emails. Dad drops the occasional line like, "You shouldn't let your emotions rule you." Ethan, not once has he apologized. But yesterday, he finally tested. "I can't believe you left Mom and Dad like this. The whole family is suffering because of you." Suffering because of me, because I stopped paying their water bill and mortgage? I leaned back, feeling the sore pressure along my spine from the worn but steady chair. I took a long, steady breath, and realized the silence no longer scared me like it used to. It was clarity, proof that I existed, outside their control. Every phone buzz was a scar reminder, not of guilt, but of the freedom I had fought for. The past 6 months, I hadn't answered, not out of cruelty, because I had to retrain myself not to react to cries for help that weren't real. I had gotten used to being forgotten, but the feeling of being taken for granted, like the bathroom light or the Wi-Fi, was something I didn't learn to name until much later. When I was 11, I remember the exact day Ethan scratched Dad's pickup truck. It was a Ford F-150 that he always called my third child. Ethan reversed without opening the garage door, fully leaving a long gash like a claw mark across the gray paint. Mom found it first. She gasped loudly, then silence. A minute later she turned to me and asked, "Naomi, did you touch the truck?" I froze. I had been at school at the time. I had a math test that morning and didn't even come home for lunch, but I was still the one questioned. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, with a slice of cold pizza, quiet like it had nothing to do with him. And honestly, it never did. Favoritism in our house didn't show up like a storm. It crept in like mold, slow, quiet, sinking into every brick and crevice. Some things you only realize once they've already taken over your breath. I was never called smart or someone to be proud of. What I did, straight A's, honor rolls, state math awards, was just the bare minimum someone like you should achieve. Meanwhile, Ethan got thunderous applause just for attending all his classes for a week. I worked as a waitress at a steakhouse in Norman for 3 years during college. Every night I'd get off around 10, hands aching from carrying hot trays. Still rushing back to my rental to study for the CPA exams. Ethan majored in recreational sports and dropped out midway. Mom said it's just not his learning style. I remember once I had a fever of 103 deg, and still had to drive myself to the hospital because no one had time to take me. But when Ethan had a mild stomachache from eating too many fries, Mom called an ambulance. Both Mom and Dad showed up at the ER while I got a text. There's instant noodles at home. I won't be back in time. When I got my first full-time job at the insurance company 6 years ago, I called home to share the news. My dad said, "Good. Don't forget to keep up with your health insurance payments." But when Ethan was invited to a weekend woodworking class, the entire family posted about it on Facebook. Like he just landed a full ride to Harvard. I used to believe that if I did everything right, things would balance out. I thought if I just stayed out of trouble, proved my worth, they would finally see me as a real part of the family. Not just a shadow cast by the son they truly cared about. But I was wrong. One night I came home after a long shift, back aching, neck stiff as stone. I walked into the living room and saw Mom curled up on the couch with Ethan flipping through a photo album. The only picture of me was tucked between pages, faded over, exposed, and uncaptioned. Meanwhile, Ethan had 3 whole spreads labeled "Our Angel's Childhood." I stood there for a long moment, waiting for someone to notice me. No one turned around. No one spoke. No one asked if I'd eaten. I went to my room, shut the door, and that was the first night I dreamed of running, not running away, running towards something. I had spent nearly 30 years in a house I thought was a shelter, only to realize I had never truly been welcome, not as a daughter, just as a tool, the one who carried the weight, filled in the gaps, and was always responsible, so others could afford to fall apart. The older I got, the more I realized every compliment they gave Ethan was a slap in the face to my effort. They didn't need me to shine, they just needed me to stay quiet, not ask for anything, not set boundaries. As long as I kept paying for a family built on sweet lies and suffocating expectations. I still remember the exact moment things started to go off track. It was in February, 1 week before the year-end tax deadline. I was working overtime at the office, just finishing 40 hours in 3 consecutive days. When I left my desk, the screen clock showed 11:45 p.m. The streetlights reflecting off my car windows gave me a splitting headache. I still had to go home and finish a financial forecast report for a client. Mom called just as I was opening the car door. "Naomi, I'm sorry to bother you, but the gas bill this month came out to nearly $190. Your dad forgot to pay it. Can you handle it?" For me? I froze mid-motion, my work badge still hanging around my neck. Before I could say anything, she added, "Touch this once, I'll pay you back tomorrow." How many times had I heard that line before? Dill. Her voice made me soften. I transferred the money right there in the parking lot, then drove home like it was no big deal. That was just the beginning. The next week it was the electric bill, then water, then internet. At first Mom always said, "Just a short-term advance, I'll repay you tomorrow." Gradually, that turned into, "Family's supposed to help each other. And Dad, Naomi's got it." No one asked if I had the money. No one apologized for calling me late at night. I was the kid with a monthly paycheck, so I was expected to shoulder it. A month later, Ethan lost his credit due to missing payments on a graphic design laptop. Mom called me during a meeting. "Sweetheart, Ethan is in a tough spot. He's really trying, but no one's helping him. Can you co-sign and get a replacement? It's just an old laptop. Maybe $950. I'll pay you back gradually." I knew what that gradually meant, but I still said, yes, because back then, I didn't fully understand that when love gets exploited, it stops being love. Within 3 months, I was covering most of the household's monthly bills, around $1,200 a month. I wired money through my banking app. So often I had to set up automatic reminders. Some months when I gently said, I needed to keep some money for myself. Mom sighed. "I didn't think you'd be so calculating. Our family is going through a hard time." One Saturday afternoon, I came home arms loaded with Whole Foods, groceries, a box of detergent, toilet paper, and almond milk. As I stepped inside, I saw Ethan sprawled out on the couch, chomping pizza, watching YouTube on the big screen TV, ceiling fans spinning above him. No one came out to help. No one asked if I was tired. I set the bags on the kitchen counter and heard Mom call from the bedroom. "Did you get Dad's favorite cookies?" I didn't answer. I just quietly opened the fridge. The only thing in there that belonged to me was a bottle of water and half a dried lemon. That night I went home, opened my laptop and created a new Excel spreadsheet. I labeled each category: electricity, gas, water, Ethan's car, repair, medicine for Dad, credit card debt. I was forced to co-sign. When the total appeared on the final line, I sat frozen for almost 10 minutes, 6 months. Over $16,000. I printed the spreadsheet and taped it to the wall above my desk. Not to remind myself to ask for repayment, but to never forget again. To stop lying to myself that I was giving out of love. When the truth was I was being drained, I started saying no softly like a little experiment. I refused to drive Ethan to get his license renewed. The result? Mom called, her voice trembling. "You've changed, Naomi. You've grown cold and selfish." Dad sent a short text. "You need to know your place." And Ethan, he simply messaged, "Don't think a little money makes you special." I used to believe that if I was good, enough gave enough, they would realize how important I was when I started keeping just a sliver for myself. They acted like I had betrayed them that night. I couldn't sleep, not because of anger, but because I finally realized I had never been seen as someone with limits. I was just a supplier pump pillar, but a pillar with no support. Eventually it breaks. A Saturday afternoon, I left the office close to 6 p.m. still holding the lunchbox. I hadn't had time to open all day. I had worked through the entire week. An emergency investment risk analysis project, plus a surprise meeting with a major client, had kept me from getting home before nightfall. I still stopped by the grocery store like always. I picked up everything Mom had tested me. 2 bottles of almond milk, lean beef, organic olive oil, whole grain bread. The total was nearly $175, not including the snacks and fruit I'd grabbed for Ethan, though he'd never said, "Thank you." I drove nearly 40 minutes south to the old house in East Side, Tulsa, where I'd lived for almost 20 years. Every time I turned onto that street, a knot twisted in my chest, not from nostalgia, but from a familiar, lingering ache. When I stepped inside, it wasn't fully dark yet, but the lights were already on. The front door was slightly ajar as if they were expecting me. I nudged it open with my shoulder. My hands were full. No one came to greet me. Just the buzz of a reality TV show playing. From the living room, one of those shows Ethan always watched. I set the groceries on the kitchen counter. The smell of cleaning chemicals stung my eyes. Mom always scrubbed the house on weekends, not for cleanliness, but to prove she still managed everything. Though, in truth, I was the one buying everything she used. When I turned around, she was already standing at the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, eyes unblinking. "We need to talk." Her voice was hard as stone. I froze, still in my shoes. "I just got off work," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "Can you give me a minute?" "No," she snapped. This has been put off long enough. That appeared from the stairwell behind her, silent as a shadow. Ethan remained slouched on the sofa, feet on the table, controller in hand. He didn't even look up, just mumbled, "If she's here, tighten my grip on my bag. What's going on?" Mom sighed. Like I was the cause of all this chaos. "Naomi," she said, with a hint of reproach, "you have a steady job, a car, your own apartment. This household is struggling. Your father's tired." Ethan's still trying to find his path. "I think it's time you contributed more." I went still. "I've been paying for the electricity, gas, water, internet, and part of the mortgage for nearly 2 years. I send over $1,000 every month. What more do you want?" Dad chimed in, voice flat. "We're talking about responsibility. Naomi, family is responsibility. If you're an adult, you should understand that," and nodded slowly, my voice tighter. "Then what is Ethan, a guest with free rent?" This time Ethan turned. He dropped the controller and sneered. "Don't drag me into this. I never asked you for anything. If you want to stop paying, just stop. Bear us the fake generosity." I let out a dry laugh, my chest clenched like I'd been punched. The problem is I was never pretending. I actually was generous. Mom slammed her hand on the kitchen table. "That's enough. You're getting more selfish every day, Naomi, living on your own, And now you think you're better than us. Do you even realize this house is at risk of foreclosure? Ethan's student loan got denied. Your father lost his health insurance. You're sitting there counting every dollar like we're some kind of burden. I looked at each person in that room. The house I had helped keep afloat. People who had never once asked how I was doing out there. If I had enough to eat, if I'd ever missed a rent deadline just to cover for them first. So what exactly is this conversation for? I asked. You want my entire paycheck, want me to pay off the mortgage in full, buy Ethan a new car so he can finally feel motivated. Ethan stood glaring. You're out of line, Naomi. I met his gaze. Out of line. I work over 60 hours a week, sacrificed my personal life just to keep this house from being seized. And you? Besides clicking that controller and making demands, what have you done? Silence. Dad clutched the brim of his cap, voice lowering. If you were a responsible daughter, you'd understand. I nodded, not angry anymore, just hollow. So if I don't pay, I'm not a daughter anymore. No one responded. I picked up my bag and opened the door. Cold wind slapped my face. Like a quiet slap. But it cleared my head instantly. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just said softly, just loud enough. Then this house no longer has a daughter named Naomi. No one said a word after my final sentence. The air in the room felt thick, like all the oxygen had been sucked out. Ethan stood frozen next to the couch, still holding an unopened water bottle. Dad stared at the floor, gripping the brim of his cap, like he was trying to reason with the universe. And Mom. She looked at me like I was a stranger, not angry, not regretful, just that dry, cold stare I'd never forget. Get out. She hissed, voice sharp like a razor. If you dare turn, you're back on this family now. Don't you ever come back? I didn't move. Dad looked up like he wanted to say something, then just sighed and turned away. Ethan's smirk, not quite in contempt, more like called it. First. Opened my mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to say one last thing. Then I shut it. Because surprisingly, I didn't feel pain. I felt light. I took a step back, still holding the grocery bag. I hadn't even had time to put in the fridge. The front door was just behind me. Streetlights spilled in from outside, cutting a diagonal shadow across the tiled floor. I turned, pushed the door open. Before stepping out, I looked back one last time. No one looked at me, no one called out, not a single word to stop me. The door clicked shut behind me with a clean final sound, like a blade, severing the last tangled thread connecting me to that house. Outside, the cold was sharper than I expected, the smell of damp grass, dry wind rustling through bare maple branches. I walked slowly to the car, set the bag on the passenger seat and got behind the wheel. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, no tears, no shaking, no regret. I had always imagined I'd cry like a child when this moment came, but no. What I felt was an emptiness that felt like release. Not lonely emptiness, just enough space to finally breathe. I drove out of that neighborhood slower than usual. As each street lamp passed, like a line break in a sentence, I knew a chapter of my life had ended, not with fireworks, but with irreversible silence. On the way back to my apartment, I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone, just the sound of tires rolling steadily across pavement, a strange but soothing feeling. No one waiting on me, no one expecting a receipt, no one asking for just one more little thing. By the time I got home, clock read close to 8 p.m. Carried the bags up to my second-floor apartment, small, warm, softly lit with pale yellow light, and the faint scent of lavender oil still lingering. I placed the bags on the kitchen counter, slipped off my shoes, hung up my coat. Every motion was slow, strangely peaceful, like I had just stepped out of a storm. I didn't realize I'd been trapped in for years. It wasn't until I poured a glass of water and sat down on the couch that I started to shake. Not from fear, but because my body had finally relaxed after so many years spent on high alert. I looked around the room. Everything was old. Garage sale, table, faded fabric, couch. A monster in the corner, just sprouting a new leaf after 2 months of neglect. But this was my space, no criticism, no guilt, no stares that demanded I somehow hold it together. Just one more time, I opened my laptop and pulled up my budget spreadsheet. Total column read, $19,840.17. That's how much I had given since January. No reimbursements, no promises kept. I scrolled to the bottom, added a final line, final expense, freedom, cost, priceless. Then I closed it. I didn't need to see it again. That night I slept 8 full hours, no dreams. No waking up to late-night texts from Ethan, just the soft of the ceiling fan and the steady rhythm of my heart. Finally, at peace. 3 days after I walked out of that East Side, Tulsa house, I sat alone in the small kitchen of my second-floor apartment, frying eggs in an old pan I'd bought off Facebook Marketplace. The butter sizzled, the smell of coffee drifted through the morning air. The strangest part was, no one was calling me, no phone ringing, no text saying, "Naomi, can you send $120 to fix the plumbing?" No vendor alerts, no one asking if I could front the cost of Dad's medicine, or chip in a little more. So Ethan wouldn't have to eat ramen again tonight. For the first time in years I had breakfast without checking my account balance, and I didn't feel guilty spending money on myself. I set my coffee down and looked out the window. The April breeze in Oklahoma still had a morning chill, but it no longer stung. It felt like a soft reminder. I'm alive, and I have the right to live in peace. I started rebuilding a rhythm that was mine. Every evening after work, I shut my laptop by 6 p.m., no more after-hours emails. I signed up for a Wednesday yoga class and spent Saturdays at the local farmer's market, where I learned spring tomatoes are sweeter than I ever realized. I bought a few books I used to consider too indulgent. I started planting herbs on my balcony, a pot of rosemary, a few lavender bushes, and a little mint that I accidentally overwatered. Somehow, it still lived. In those quiet evenings I began to understand something. Silence wasn't scary, like I used to think back in that old house. Every quiet moment felt like a storm waiting to break. Mom's silence meant she was angry. Dad's silence meant judgment, and Ethan's silence meant he was calculating his next ask. But here, silence just meant no one needed anything from me. And that wasn't selfish. That was freedom. For the first time in over 10 years, I could actually plan to save. I opened a separate account just for personal goals. A trip to Colorado, a new laptop, maybe even hiring a financial advisor to better understand investing. One Sunday morning I brewed a batch of cold brew and sat on the balcony, reading the sentence where I folded the page read, "You don't owe anyone the slow erosion of your life just to keep them comfortable." I'd spent so long believing family meant unconditional sacrifice. But then I realized carrying others doesn't mean burning yourself to give them light and shade. One afternoon in early May, I ran into Macy, an old college friend, at a company seminar. When we had lunch, she looked at me and said, "You're doing better. Aren't you look like the Naomi from freshman year?" "Only stronger?" I just smiled. No stories needed the way I sat with my back straight, not checking the time every minute, not clutching my phone like someone was about to demand emotional rent. That was answer enough. I didn't block my mom, dad, or Ethan, but I turned off notifications, not to hide but to stop being dragged back in. Over the past 6 months I've seen their texts, some blaming, some pretending, nothing happened, some begging. But I haven't replied, because I've learned replying isn't always kindness. Sometimes silence is self-defense. That night, while cleaning up after dinner, I opened the mail. Amid the usual flyers was a slim envelope. Return address from the bank? Mom's name on the header, but mine printed in the bottom right corner. I opened it. Third mortgage delinquency. Notice I froze for a second. Then I set the letter down, folded it, and exhaled slowly. I knew what was coming, and this time I was ready to face it without bowing my head. The message from Dad came while I was organizing the company's quarterly report. Just 8 words. "Naomi, why haven't you paid this month?" I read it 3 times. My eyes stopped at the word paid, like it was some invisible duty. I had forgotten. No greeting, no question mark, no context. As if I was still part of their family's financial distribution system without ever being told. I shut my laptop, took out my phone and opened my banking app. For the past 6 months I hadn't sent them a single dollar. I thought that was clear. Apparently they thought I was just on pause. I pulled up my old payment history. Before I left, I had been sending $1,300 a month to help cover the mortgage. As Mom used to put it, I never saw the actual bill. There was no contract. My name wasn't on any ownership document. I wanted to ignore it, but something gnawed at me. So I called the bank. The customer service rep answered after 3 rings. I gave the address, confirmed my identity, and asked, trying to keep my voice steady, "Can you tell me the current status of the mortgage for 1547 Westwood Drive?" He hesitated, then replied, "That account is 8 months delinquent. It's currently in pre-foreclosure. Final notice was sent about 3 weeks ago." I froze. 8 months. That meant, even while I was still sending money, they weren't paying the bank. I hung up, shocked, numb. All those late nights, working overtime all the times. I denied myself basic comforts just to transfer money by the 15th each month. They hadn't even used it for the mortgage. Opened my budgeting spreadsheet, traced every transaction. From the moment I started helping temporarily to when I finally stopped, I had sent over $18,000. And now that house was about to be taken. I called Ethan. He picked up faster than I expected. "Naomi, finally." "Mom's freaking out. The bank sent another letter." "What's your plan?" I was confused. "My plan for what? I'm not involved with that house anymore." He sighed loudly, voice dripping with blame. "Don't play dumb. You've been paying the mortgage all this time. Then you suddenly cut us off, and now the bank's threatening foreclosure. Don't you feel any responsibility?" Bit my tongue. "What about the money I sent for 8 straight months? Who had it? Who used it?" He went silent for a beat. Then, flatly, "I don't know. Mom said you were only covering part of it, so the last few months came up short." "She probably used it." I cut in. "You live there. You didn't notice the bank notices, power being shut off, then turn back on. You didn't wonder why the mortgage wasn't being paid, even though I was sending money." His voice sharpened. "What are you trying to say?" "We're struggling. You're out there living comfortably, and we're about to lose the house. All it takes is 1 more month's payment. They'll work with us." I laughed coldly. "I'm not your backup plan anymore, Ethan. Don't say we. I'm not part of your group." I hung up. 3 minutes later, Mom called. I let it ring. My chest tightened. I didn't cave. Her text followed right after, short bursts. "Naomi, I'm sorry. If you felt pressured, this house is yours too. You grew up here. You'll regret it if we lose it." I didn't reply. Because for the first time in my life, I saw it clearly. They never saw me as their daughter, only as their undocumented insurance policy, a walking wallet, a bailout button for mistakes. On repeat, I looked at the bank letter still on my table, then I tore it in half, not out of anger, because I had finally accepted the truth. I couldn't save a house I never owned, just like I never really had a place in that family. That night I opened my phone and scrolled through the endless string of messages from Mom. It took 3 swipes just to reach the first one. "Naomi, I know you're upset, but it's not as simple as you think. Your dad lost his insurance coverage and Ethan has no one else to rely on. But if you let the bank take the house, the entire family will say you're heartless." Then came a text from Dad. "Sweetheart, this is still your home. 2. You really want to see us on the street. And Ethan always rude and thoughtless. Fine, just walk away. We'll see who helps you when it's your turn to need someone." I stared at the screen, feeling nothing, no anger, no hurt, just a chilling clarity. They had built a whole system around me where my kindness was a duty, and my silence was a trap. Every time I helped, they saw it as expected. Every time I stayed quiet, they assumed I was weak. I called back. Not because they deserved an explanation, but because I wanted to end things properly. Mom picked up after 1 ring. She put it on speaker, and I could hear Dad and the sound of tapping on the table in the background. Ethan was clearly nearby. "Naomi," Mom began, her voice so sweet. It made my skin crawl. "I just want to ask one thing," I said slowly. 8 months ago, I was still sending the mortgage payments. Where did that money go? Silence for a few seconds. Then Mom staggered. "Your dad needed dental work. Then Ethan's scar broke down, and the cost of living has gone up. Everything piled on. I meant to sort it out later, but..." I cut in. "You all used the money I sent for unrelated things, then let the house go into foreclosure." Dad jumped in. "We didn't mean for it to happen, but you left right when things got hard. If you'd stayed, maybe it wouldn't have gotten this bad." I scoffed. No. If I had stayed, you would have still hidden the truth. Still spent my money and made me clean up the mess, just like always. Bums tone snap. But Naomi, don't be so ungrateful. I carried you for 9 months now. We're about to lose our home. And you just look away. No, I replied calmly. I'm not ungrateful, but I'm not stupid anymore either. Silence, I went on. I'm your daughter, not a financial rescue plan. I'm not your private bank, not your last resort. I'm definitely not the excuse you use to dodge your own responsibilities. Ethan shouted in the background. You think you're so special without us, you'd be nothing. I laughed, not out of amusement, but because that sentence confirmed everything I'd suspected for years. I didn't succeed because of you. I said I succeeded despite you. Mom started crying. Dad exhaled loudly. Ethan muttered something. I couldn't catch. I no longer cared. I wish you all the best, I said. From now on, you own your choices. And if anyone asks why I cut ties with that house, tell them the truth. You spent the money I sent, then kept the truth from me. I hung up. My hand didn't shake, my heart beat slow. I opened my contacts. Mom blocked. Dad blocked. Ethan blocked, not out of hatred. Because I needed peace. I sent one final message in the family group chat. Just one line. I'm not your backup plan anymore. Goodbye. Then I left the group. For the first time in years, my phone went completely quiet. No guilt-laced texts, no midnight calls, no repeated rings, like alarms, warning me I'd done something wrong. I sat on the sofa and poured myself a cup of peppermint tea. Outside the window, the sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving a streak of orange across the sky. I leaned back against the cushion, eyes closed, feeling empty, yet full in the strangest way. I didn't know how they'd get by now, who they'd find to shoulder the blame, what story they'd spin for relatives, neighbors, and friends. I only knew one thing. I was no longer the ending to that story. Naomi's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes family doesn't come with respect. Cutting ties with toxic relationships, even those labeled family, isn't selfish. It's a brave act of self-preservation. In real life, many people are silently carrying burdens, sacrificing themselves out of obligation. But real love never demands you give up your identity or your peace. You have every right to say enough. What do you think about Naomi's decision? What would you do in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, real-life stories about family boundaries and self-worth.